The difference is I drink because I want to have a little fun. They drink because they know they're never going to be happy again.
Whoa.
Okay, it looks like we're about to film a rap video with Tupac Shakur and Lil Nas X, illegitimate child. And apparently Nicole Kidman secretly had a baby with Jake Paul on the right. You know what I'm saying?
I'm dead.
But it's all right. Hey, Arsenio Hall's got a girlfriend. So,
First of all,
yeah.
I'm not Arsenio Hall.
Yet.
I'm Arsenio Hall meets Jada Pinkett Smith.
Oh.
Literally, it's a real thing. Look it up. So, one of the issues is the anti-Mormon podcasters have this idea that what's considered hip and fun is to be an anti and to be hostile to the church. And so we're going to show what semi-active Mormon YSAs are actually like. So, Cardin, you're gonna ask just general questions, what we think about church history, Mormon theology, all that stuff.
Okay.
And what do our friends who drink and smoke a little and do whatever the frick they want to do, but who believe in the church, have to say about these things? Do they fit the mold that the antis think?
Okay. All right. So just basic questions. Okay. So what was your favorite sin that made you a bad person who chose to go inactive, who ended up disappointing their parents and their entire society at large, and who will sit being judged by us three active people as we use your failures in life to make us feel better? Go.
That's not a general question.
No,
Like, that's
I just
not
kidding.
general at all.
Actually, dude, I didn't even know. What do I ask? Like, hey, where you from, dog? You know what I'm
I didn't
saying?
even follow that question.
Look, I don't know
at
to
all.
hang out with inactive people. I hang out with boomers. They're apologists all day. I'm not cool like you. I'm just kidding. Actually, no. Yeah, just tell us your stories, bro. Let's just start out. So just who wants to go first, man?
Oh, I can go first. I was pretty much born in Haiti, born in the church. My parents met in the church, and so I was then conceived after they met each other, pretty much after meeting the missionaries. And then afterwards, I moved on to Connecticut around in 2010. And then, of course, things, it was obviously a huge move for me. And things always went well for me, honestly. But then I lived in Connecticut for 8 years, and then I moved out to Utah around 2 years ago, and currently that's where I'm at.
Okay, cool. So, let's get to know you all first before we ask you specific questions. John, go. I mean, not John. Sorry, Luke Paul Jr. Go.
So my name's TJ. I was born in Georgia, but raised in Idaho, which is like a pretty predominant area where Mormons or LDS members like practice. And I don't know, I was active all my life. I ended up serving a mission. I came home early for personal reasons, and then ever since then I've kind of just like slowly faded away from the church. Not my belief system, but just like practicing going to church, taking the sacrament, all that. But
Okay, cool. And then who's the supermodel you brought along, brother?
Yeah, you go. What's your answer?
This is Liberty.
You about to say a different last name and make something official on the podcast?
I was gonna say Liberty and to give her last name, but I don't want to dox.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. All right, so Liberty, tell us your story. What's going on?
Similar to TJ, so I was born and raised in Boise, Idaho. I was an active member my whole life. Went on a mission for a while, about 9 months. Came home early, and then the same thing kind of I call it taking a break. I just needed a break for a little bit. Never fully planned on leaving the church entirely. Still believe in all the core beliefs. So.
Okay.
I'm slowly bringing her back.
Yes.
Yeah. Is he your guilty pleasure? It used to be, it's so hilarious because it used to be edgy that, you had to do self-destructive things, to be edgy and stuff. Now, just to be edgy, you just gotta go to church. Like, you used to have to smoke in the bathroom or have illegal substances in order to be cool and edgy and be punk rock. And now the new punk rock is dude, I went to church on Sunday, dog. You know what I'm saying? Dude, my boyfriend, he's cray, dude. He freaking takes me to sacrament meeting. Yeah, I'm saying it's hilarious.
That's wild.
So, all right. So then I guess what's your story here then, guys? We'll just start out with you, John / Lil Nas X. So what you say that, okay, you kind of faded away a little bit.
Mhm.
Do you have any specific instance that caused that? What led to the chill out, the slowdown?
Well, as I mentioned, yeah, I was born and raised in the church. I would say, that it really started around the time where I had to, figure out if I wanted to go serve. Around the time I turned 16, 17, where things, really started to get serious for me in my life, where, I started thinking about college. The mission is something that, a lot of youths and the young men always, think about around that age. And so, once I got to that point, it just became, a moment for me to actually think about, if I'm able to go out there and teach something that I have questions about. And so around the time I just had a lot of questions, and I went and asked my bishop, of course. And, I did get answers, but, sort of like how, Liberty mentioned, I just felt like I needed a break because, with certain things, when you're raised into it, you feel like you don't know anything else besides that. And so I just kind of needed to, learn the world, for myself a little bit. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, honestly.
Okay, cool. Rock on. Sounds legitimate enough. Go for it.
Well, I kind of piggyback off what John said. I would just also add, I feel like there's within the church and being raised in the church, personally, I feel like there's an expectation to do things whether or not you want to do them. And because of that, like it put pressure on me as a kid. And I'm not saying like what I was being told to do was wrong, but for me personally, I didn't see myself wanting to go forward with first of all a mission, which I ended up going on, which to me was a surprise. I ended up coming home early because of it.
Well, what made you go on it?
On it, a lot of peer pressure. Surprisingly, not from my family, but from my friends, because I was surrounded by active members of the church, and they were all going on missions and like.
Yeah, but you didn't dedicate yourself to a 2-year volunteer service mission without having some kind of personal conviction, right?
I did. I'm not going to say I didn't believe and I didn't want to go help serve others and I didn't feel like God was calling me to do it. But at the same time, like that's all I ever knew. And so like with my friends, like I didn't know how genuine it was. Like I didn't know how genuine my spirituality was for my church. Like I couldn't tell what was actually my beliefs and what was my friend and my parents' beliefs. Mm-hmm. And so when I went, I had a pretty big faith crisis on my mission. And that's what caused me to come home, just because I chose to. And there was also some other things that I just went through, like with my family, that just kind of led me to leave. And it wasn't really my belief system. It was just kind of like the experience I had up to that point just tore me personally away from the church. And so I came home.
Okay, so I see you nodding your head a lot there, John. Would you so you say you kind of started going inactive like 16 to 18ish, right?
Correct.
If I remember correctly. Yeah. Okay. Was there anything in particular about it? I think it's both of you guys have said something interesting where you said, okay, well, that's what I grew up in, that's all I knew. However, being in Haiti and in Connecticut, like, dog, that ain't like TJ growing up in Idaho where it really literally is like all you know. You obviously had thousands of secular friends and influence outside in the world, you know. There had to have been something. Is your family pretty strong, or were they just kind of like not really too into it, so it was easy to not get into it? Was it like a rebellion where you're like, this is bothering me because they're making go to church? Like, what was it?
Well, my family is very, my parents go to church every Sunday. My family is very, their foundation is very strong when it comes to, the church. And of course, coming from Haiti, I've definitely seen a lot of blessings from the church, and those are things that I'm very, very thankful for. But as I mentioned earlier, I just kind of felt pressured when it came to the mission. Whereas my older brother went and served, and so around the time he was coming back, I started to think about college and as well as going to serve, and so that just kind of led me to to do my own research. That research, ended up, giving me more questions, which of course I had people to ask. I had my father, and as well as, very stand up, very good leaders in the church that had very good answers for me. And so there wasn't really, honestly, as of right now, there's no questions that, that have not been answered, for me. And so, that's why my faith currently is still, very, very strong in the church, and so.
But like, have you read the CES letter?
No, yeah.
Already jumping to that.
I was gonna ask it, but there's one thing I want to ask you before. And by the way, Brad, feel like
read that.
I've got a question too.
I was gonna say,
I definitely read
feel free to jump in because I don't want this to feel like an inquisition. Because I also realize the camera angles are going from me to them, from me to them, and it looks like a really bad B movie interrogation.
John and
when
TJ.
did you stop?
John and TJ, have you guys read the CES letter?
Yes.
Honestly, what I would say about that whole thing is if you're gonna try to attack, the church, you gotta at least try to make sure there's no typos, bro. Like, come on. It's embarrassing.
Okay. Actually, okay. Well, I was gonna wrap up.
I want to hear your answer, TJ.
Yeah, TJ.
I've read it. I actually read it on my mission.
Oh, really?
I feel like the CES letter is one of the things that kept me believing in the church because I realized how stupid people can be.
Oh, man.
Savage. Okay. So we're gonna ask you all about the CS letter. I want to finish rounding the corner though, and I want Brad, please jump in because I don't want this to just be the Cardinellis Inquisition. Okay.
Yeah. So I've got something maybe before that
fine.
maybe ties into what you're thinking.
Okay.
I'm curious to know from all three of you guys, like, what stopped you from like being embittered toward the church? Because that's something we hear a lot, is that people, like, when they are struggling with things about the church, they end up getting like really resentful toward it. So I guess what happened with you guys there? And Liberty, are you raising your hand over there?
Quick is raising my hand for me, actually.
Oh.
So you want to know what kept us from having those negative?
Yeah,
Okay.
or did you have them and you're just past it now? Like I can't tell.
I did for a while. Anytime the church was brought up, especially like at home with my family, with my parents, because I felt like it was very targeted towards me. They were bringing up those church things because they knew I wasn't really living the standards, not super active, and so I did get very defensive, kind of bitter and angry, and I've moved past those feelings now, which is nice, but I do understand where people are coming from when they have those feelings. Like it feels like a lot of pressure and like being targeted.
Was it just general maturity that made you move past it? Did you read a great book on forgiveness, Chicken Soup for the Soul? Like what do you think caused that?
Honestly, I think it was time. I had to learn a lot about myself.
Well.
Yes, I did. I had to grow up. I had to learn a few things about myself that I wouldn't have probably learned in the church, and kind of it just comes back full circle.
Okay, then the only last question I was going to ask you guys before we started lampooning the CES letter, which I think is amazing and fun content and should just be the second half of this entire podcast.
Yes.
But I was going to ask you, so if you've kind of come to this realization that, like, okay, both TJ and John here have similar stories. I grew up, it was relatively Orthodox household. There were some things that I just felt I had to figure out for myself. Okay. I totally get that if you think like, oh, I got to figure it out for myself. I personally believe in one way or another, everybody at some point goes astray. All right. But what keeps you out now? It seems like you've kind of already figured out that, okay, well, I knew the CS letter was lying to me. I knew a lot of the anti-Mormon arguments were bunk, but you obviously had something strong and deep enough that you thought, I don't want to keep going to church. So it seems like you've kind of overcome some of those doubts. What keeps you from just coming back?
Honestly, I don't think there's anything specific. The way I like to compare to it is someone who wants to quit an addiction. Once you get into a habit, you are doing that habit consistently, and whether you want to do it or not, you can't stop it. And until you put action down to stop it, you're not going to. And so for me, it's not that I don't want to go to church. I just have habits that I need to break.
It's also something that
I feel like going to church is one of those
overnight.
habits though that I need to start
You can't
to break my other habits.
I feel like you can't flip that switch overnight. Like if you're using addiction as your example, I think people expect you to just be able to just stop, just flip the switch and just go full throttle back to where you were. Whereas like at my point in my life, I am trying to get back into it more, but I need to do it at my own pace, where it's good for myself and not trying to meet other people's expectations.
Exactly. I was actually talking to John about this earlier in the week. out of the blue just reached out to me. He's like, hey, let's go to church. We don't even have to go to sacrament. Let's just show up for the talks, listen.
Please tell
Hear
me
what
you
they have
showed
to
up in
say.
that bandana. Please tell me you showed up in that bandana.
Honestly, I might just pull up with it. We'll see.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, okay, but see, also,
But I'm curious. What made you want to go back? Like, what made you want to do that?
Well, for me, with the church, the reason why I've always had the utmost respect for the church is because of family and the values that it teaches. Growing up, I've seen a lot of blessings, for my family and for all the families that were, around me. And so, it's something that, I would want for my kids growing up. And so, that's honestly, the main reasons why, I have no negative feelings toward the church, where, just like Liberty, I did for, a certain period of time, honestly, a month. And I very quickly got over it because the church teaches very important values and, things that actually do help you in the long run.
well, that's kind of cool. So, well, kind of cool. Yeah. It's the point of the church, actually, I should say. But this might be just a cultural argument, but my heart sank a little bit when I heard TJ say that, okay, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'm going to try and rephrase what you
No,
said.
you're good. Go ahead.
That, okay, you kind of feel like certain addictions preclude you from church membership, right? And I wholeheartedly blame boomers for this, though to a certain extent, if I'm honest enough, I'm probably just as guilty of it as the next person. Okay. But, thanks for that thumbs up, Kwaku. That was super helpful. As I'm, admitting my faults, Kwaku's like, yeah, dude. Yeah,
You totally
dude, yeah,
have
you
those.
suck. You know what I'm saying?
He's just keeping you humble,
yeah, just
Carden,
keeping me
right?
humble.
Yeah.
But anyway, I've always loved the phrase, though culturally I think we don't live up to it all the time, that the church is a sanctuary for sinners, a hospital for sinners, not a country club for saints. So I would just say, dude, I'm a flawed individual. I'm just addicted to different things than you. Like, look at me. I'm freaking fat, dude. Like this, I really think like food, sugar.
You're not fat. You're sexy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Now
dude,
you're
yeah.
coming to my ward with me, dog. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know. I would just challenge that thought that, and I think honestly, sometimes a lot of that depends on the ward. If I'm honest with myself, like I've had better experiences in some wards than others, and a lot of it just has to do with the personality and the humility of the people that are there.
Yeah.
I see John going like, yeah.
Oh, no, just because church in Connecticut is completely different from church in Utah.
Yeah.
Like, here's a great example. Let's say, for example, let's say you go to church in Connecticut, and you have tattoos. It's something very
Yeah, like so
simple.
does half the ward, dude.
Right. No, not even that. But people won't even look at you like it's weird. It's just you've come to church and you're here, and that's what matters.
Yeah.
But in Utah, people are just gonna be looking at you as you're walking down, as you sit down. It's like you can just feel. I can always feel energy, and that's something that that's very important to me. And if I'm walking into a place and I don't feel invited and I don't feel welcomed, I'm not gonna be there.
Yeah.
It's as simple as it is.
Dude, I got to tell you, man. See, when I was doing the Andrew Yang podcast, it was hilarious. He talked about the importance of he wanted, as part of police officers training, to have to serve in one of the urban cities before they went to the rural cities, so they kind of like understand what real problems were like, and so he had a proposal about a certain type of exchange program, and I said I'd love it if like the cops in like Alpine, Utah, before they went all like guns blazing, you know what I'm saying, on the people speeding down Interstate 89, would get a reality check by just having to spend 6 weeks in New York, you know what I'm saying, and seeing what like, real problems are,
Yeah.
In that vein, I've kind of always thought I've been so blessed that I've gone to church in some wild places in Germany when I was the one getting translated to. And let me tell you, you can feel the love of members when there's no ability to communicate in your language, but they're just looking at you and you can just tell they're like, we're happy you're here.
Yes.
Right.
Mhm.
And you're like, that is heavenly. Okay. I've been to church in New York City. I've been at church in Los Angeles where during sacrament testimony meeting, okay, one person gets up from the second row, bears their testimony. Their friend gets up from this second row and also bears their testimony. And this third kid I didn't recognize that was sitting next to them got up simply because he thought it was his turn. And he was sitting next to the people that had gotten up in the second row since they were the closest. He thought that was just the social norm, that it was my turn to get up. And he goes up and he says, I was walking down the street today, confused about my life, not wondering what direction I had. And I said the first prayer of my life. And then I looked up and I saw the temple and I thought I should go there. So I am here. Can anybody tell me why I'm here? What? Like, what? That happened to me in Los Angeles. A guy getting up in a testimony who's not a member, never been to church in his life, saying he said his first prayer, and then when he said that prayer, he saw the temple. So he walked in, and he accidentally walked into the YSA ward that was doing a testimony meeting and sat down in the first seat that was there. That was right next to the two youth group chicks, you know what I'm saying, who were the first effervescent ones to go up and give her testimony, and then basically pours his soul out that he is asking God for direction in his life, and he doesn't know where he belongs. And he wasn't some, I shouldn't, classify people as lesser because they're, homeless or derelict or lost or, mental health issues. It wasn't, it was just a normal guy. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Just pouring his soul out. So I've been in those situations. And then I've also been to my family members' wards in Lehigh. You know what I'm saying? And then I've also come back from being in New York. And then I remember there was a specific instance where all of a sudden I heard ladies talking in our YSA ward saying, well, I heard she went out with Steven and she just didn't have a very fun time at all. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I forgot gossip. Like I forgot about gossip.
The thing that you say that, and the thing that I find funny is when kids my age, when youth in the church tell their parents stories like this, or will talk to people, they'll tell them, well, you're not there for other people. You're not there. You're there to feel the Spirit. But it's so hard to when you're surrounded by people that are not there to feel the Spirit.
And do you know what I think is interesting is there is a little bit of truth to that you're not there for other people. You're there to feel the Spirit. But in some ways, you are actually there for other people in order to help them. You're not there to judge them and like put them in their place. You're there to be of service and to watch for any opportunity that you can to like be helpful, not to like keep reminding them of things.
I don't know if you know this, Cardin, but the last time I took the sacrament was in your home about 1 year and 2 months ago. And it was one of the most welcoming things that I've ever felt.
Oh,
but
hey, thanks, man. Hey, I did something right. Did you hear that, Bill Real?
Oh my gosh.
I said. Oh, thanks, man.
Honestly, I think I know exactly what it is. With the church and everywhere else it is besides Utah, I think people have a lot more of a value in it because, I feel like when people go through certain experiences where they're not in the church, they weren't born in it, and they actually they encountered the church later in their lives. When it changes their life, I feel like they have more of a value to it. Just because with certain things, once people have something for so long, they can start to take advantage of it and start to look for loopholes. I just feel like people value it everywhere else more besides Utah, in my opinion. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
So I mean, the Lord tells us to congregate in scriptures, and so that's the reason I always have an issue with that one like meme that goes around where it's like, a woman told her bishop, I'm going to leave the church. And the bishop said, why? And he goes, everybody in the ward's on their phones. He goes, all right, sister, take this cup of water and walk around the sacrament room. That one.
We all know that one.
I walked around. I couldn't see anybody. Well, because you are focusing on yourself. When you focus... No, actually, that's not how it is when you're like the kid in your young men's and you're the one getting bullied in your like Saratoga Springs ward, right?
Yeah.
Or you have like.
By the way, we're throwing all these cities in Utah under the bus. There's great people in Lehigh. There's great people in Saratoga Springs.
I'm sure there's great wards too.
But there's not great people in Tooele. Can we be honest about that?
Oh my god.
Tooele sucks. No, but seriously, I mean, that doesn't work when you say, "Oh, just pay attention to you," because the point is to congregate and be together. Be one. I say unto you, be one. And if you're not one, you are not mine. And so there's this whole call for us to come together. And so when members of the church are not acting like that, like we're so caught up in our gossipy suburbanism, you are hurting other people's testimonies, and you can't just chalk it off to, well, they just need to focus on themselves. No, you need to not be a jerk. And I'm going to say something. I think this especially applies more to the women of the church than the men. Can I just be real?
Looks like Liberty has something to say.
I agree full-heartedly. Absolutely.
I'm saying no.
Absolutely.
There are literal studies and stuff where okay, everyone's been to some not very welcoming or rather cold elders quorums, but usually it's just the dudes. I have the stories I hear continuously of gossip and bad mouthing and bullying is almost always from Relief Society.
Well, here's the deal. The science.
Liberty's
the science
got something
proves
to add.
everything that you have to say. No, I'm going to mansplain for a second. Okay.
Favorite.
So no, actually say what you want to say, and then
No,
I actually
you go first. You go. First
I go
and I'll
first?
follow. Yeah.
Okay. The science actually solidifies your claim, Kwaku. Men are overt. That's why so many men become engineers, because they're obsessed with things and overt actions upon those things. Women are relational generally. That's why so many women, when they go to medical school, will choose like nursing and nurturing programs, rehabilitation, stuff like that. While the men will do surgery because that's cool. You're having a robot fixing things. Men are obsessed with things. Women are obsessed with relationships. And so gossip, being one of the destructive aspects of, ill speaking of others, would predominantly be a gender biased activity if that's the one that's causing people to go inactive in suburbia. But once again, that may also just be a suburban problem, because the wealth of the saints has become, to a certain extent, its downfall. And also I think some of it's generational. You know what our third most popular podcast is of all the Midnight Mormons podcasts, Brad? You're on the thumbnail of it.
The third most popular?
Third most. Yeah. The most popular one is, for some reason, the one about BYU professors, woke professors leaving the youth astray with Kwaku. The second one, according to views, is Debunking John DeLynn, 1 out of 3. It's also the one that gets rated by ex-Mormons the most, because it's got it's totally ratioed. It's like 49% likes to dislikes,
Oh,
or
no.
something like that. Yeah, it's really funny. People watch our content like crazy. But our third one is the generational loyalty versus authenticity podcast, in which we talk about the revolution the brethren didn't see coming. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I take solace. My heart breaks when I hear stories like this. It doesn't break thinking, okay, there was a young man that wanted to figure out if this was just a family thing or if it was his personal thing. All of us go through that in one varying degree or another. Maybe yours took 2 years, mine took 2 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Maybe, John's took 4 years, whatever it is. Like, everybody goes through that at once. You know what I'm saying? So that doesn't break my heart. What breaks my heart is how the church culture handled it, because these faith crises, or these faith questions, I should say, have existed since the millennia, right? But they've never been handled so poorly until like boomers and Gen Xers came along with their whole loyalty versus authenticity. And if you're asking questions, it's somehow a sign of like, you're not like loyal to the cause or something. And I think, if I'm humble enough to admit, the church culture handled that poorly, very poorly, for like 30 years. And that's why I think so many people did go inactive. But I do take solace also in the fact that the world sucks so badly. You know what I'm saying? Just like you said, the CS letter helped keep you, active for a while. The world sucks so badly, and there's no good alternatives to such a degree that it's kind of like, well, hopefully they'll realize that, yes, we did suck at that for a while. And me being part of that, I'm microscopically somehow also a part of that as well. But hopefully I can do my microscopic amount to make them feel welcome.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very humbling and flattering. And it's beautiful if you say that you felt welcome when you did sacrament at our house. So hopefully that continues. But yeah, so what would...
They want to hear
I want to hear from Liberty now.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you vaguely mentioned like the culture of the church. If I'm being honest, most of my problems with the church is the culture, not the doctrine,
Facts.
things like that. And
Facts.
I feel like, TJ, you can either back me up or
I got you.
contradict this. We grew up in a very wealthy, very
snobby, entitled area.
and the gossip amongst women in the church, especially in our area, and I'm sure it's present in a lot of other areas, was so strong, and that's almost still one of the reasons why I don't really want to go. I don't have anything against like being at church. It's the people there. If I'm not accepted and I don't feel welcomed and loved by the people there, and I know the things that they have said about me in the past or are saying about me now, why would I want to go and be around that?
And the thing with that is, people you'll say that and people are like, nah, that's a cop out. You're lazy. You don't want to go
Well,
to
then
church.
what people say is you have to separate yourself from the other people of the church. I hear this all
Exactly.
the time. It's Christ's church, not their church. So just get over it and follow the doctrine and keep going, which, yes, I do get that, and I probably could just suck it up and go, but it's like, I feel like a lot of what the church teaches is about community and about family, and that's what your ward family should be like.
You also
so if it's
want to feel like you're part of Christ's church, not just know you're a part of Christ's church. There's two, like you can know that you're part of Christ's church on earth, but until you feel it, you don't feel like you're gonna give your all.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're not the Church of Jesus Christ only. We're the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Part of our name is the fact that it's supposed to be people together. You can't have a plural on the end of your church name and then be like, well, how come we can't just focus on the self? We're not some meditating hippie cult that's just about like, you and the oneness with the sky and that. No, that's not who we are.
Yeah,
We're the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
But I think
Not
they have
Latter-day old
something-
hags, not Latter-day posers, Latter-day what? Saints. What is this saint supposed to do?
Love. Kind.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the things that I think is cool about what you guys are pointing out. And something that I think we don't recognize. The people who are not treating you well when you're at church need to repent. That I think is something that doesn't get called out very often.
Well, and they're
Like-
usually
Oh my gosh, Carden. Oh my gosh.
I agree. With,
we're not a 501c3 under fair now. I could say that.
Yeah.
No, I just
Oh my gosh.
I'm gonna edit that out. Don't worry. Don't worry.
No.
Actually, it's the one thing I am editing out that just got said. But I thought it was funny. So keep going.
It was funny.
it was funny.
So keep going.
Back
Brad.
to Liberty?
No,
No, you go.
you were saying that those that were treating you poorly need to repent. I think that was actually good.
I think there's like a little bit of a we kind of sometimes in conversations like this end up only giving like advice to the people who are struggling on how they can deal with it, because that's the only thing that feels like it's going to be useful, right? It's difficult to say like, yeah, you're in a difficult situation, but I'm just going to tell you that your environment should change, when really you can do everything that you can to help change your environment. Like, I think that's part of why sometimes people say like, okay, focus on yourself. When really the reality is the people who are treating you poorly, anyone who's gossiping at church, anybody who is judging you at church, they need to repent. And I don't think they get told that often enough. I don't think they recognize that as the sin that it is anywhere, because it's so hard for us to look introspectively sometimes on that.
Yeah, and also I think I always like pointing out natural consequences of things, because some of this I also view as a natural consequence, unfortunately, of our success. I rip on boomers a lot, and I shouldn't. I rip on Gen Xers half as much, and I should. But no, I'm just kidding. But that generation is not without its greatness either. They're the generation. More people got baptized, I think, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s under the standardized discussions than like. There's actually more members on our books now from those 30 years than like in the first 200 years combined. Like the success of the Mormon church throughout the 70s and 80s, because it did indeed standardize in order so it could grow and hit the ends of the earth and fulfill all of these beautiful prophecies, like temples in communist countries that weren't going to accept religion forever were falling behind the iron curtain, and now being opened up to faith. And you're getting these beautiful conversion stories like the guys that I told you in Los Angeles were popping up everywhere. And though that generation went to work, and their work was, let's standardize this thing as much as we can so we can push out as much of it as possible, so we can give as many blessings as we can. Like I throw them under the bus too much, but like boomers do, some boomers, man, they give their entire life savings to the freaking church like missionary program to build wells in Africa when they die. Like they give like millions to like these massive charities and so on and so forth, because in their time, the name of the game was, let's standardize this thing, let's mechanize this thing, and let's ground and pound like it was freaking World War II or something, okay?
Yeah.
Now, that yielded an amazing success and expansion, right? But just like anybody that studies explosions knows, whenever there's an explosion, there's always a vacuum that's created. And oftentimes it's actually the vacuum that can be the most destructive part of an explosion. Okay? People don't realize that. It's oftentimes not the actual debris or the shrapnel from an explosion, but the vacuum that's created that can actually cause more damage. Okay? When you're running away from a grenade, you're actually supposed to open your mouth and cover the back of your head and clench your butt cheeks together because the change in pressure will either disembowel you in the back or else will cause your eyes to pop out the front from the vacuum of power, right? So, from the vacuum of the explosion. So, like, when the church exploded in growth, well, it exploded in growth through standardization, but standardization does not work for everybody. You know what I'm saying? And in a faith that focuses so much on your individual relationship with God, we should have done a better job of not having this same stupid Thomas B. Marsh bucket of cream story said 3 times, you know what I'm saying, in the 5 different manuals we had. And I think there was a lot of slipping through the cracks that happened. And so now I feel like our duty as younger members of the church is to do as good a job as possible to lovingly find those that have possibly slipped through the cracks. And then doing our best to say, hey, look, the standardized version didn't serve you. But the pastoral one-on-one version that I offer you, you know what I'm saying? I think that's better than the alternative. And though others may have not been your friend and sucked at that, I offer you my friendship in exchange instead. And that's at least what I found has kind of worked. Is this ringing at all true?
No,
or are you
yeah,
just thinking this guy's like
honestly,
a fool?
I really appreciate that because, like,
100%.
too often members want to give me advice rather than trying to mourn with me or comfort me, you know?
Or just listen.
Just listen. That's all kids ever wanted because everyone has that rebellious phase with their parents where they don't want to listen to them. And so when someone does, they respect them.
Do you feel like you're not getting that still? Or do you feel like you kind of realized, there's only so much you can expect from people? Or
over the past 6 months, my parents, I've seen a complete 180 in them and how they look at me. For my well-being, they don't care if I'm going to church right now. They just want to see me happy. They just want to see me progressing in whatever that is, whether that's my spirituality, my career, school, like whatever. They just want to see me happy and that I'm not degressing. They want to see me doing something to improve myself.
okay, cool. So it sounds like they've matured too.
Can I say something?
Yes. And then we can totally talk about the second half of this podcast.
So
it'll be awesome.
This is 2 podcasts in one.
Yeah.
Can I say, so look, I get, when I first got to Provo, really Utah, I was a dorky good old boy. I was put on a little Mormon talk show almost immediately. So I've never been the outcast in the ward ever, right? I fully understand. I've always been the good example. In a repentance interview, my bishop once tried to set me up with his daughter. Okay, do you understand? And she was way out of my league.
That is the weirdest self-aggrandizement I've ever heard in my life, Kwaku, but it's working.
No,
it's working.
So the
dog.
point is, I've never been like I don't feel accepted or wanted. I've never had that. Okay, so I recognize what I'm saying is not coming from a place of having been there. So take it with a grain of salt. However, I have been in a lot of ward councils, and I've noticed repeatedly that the people in the wards, I mean, there's been a change, okay, but what I've seen in the wards are the people who are guilty, often of the most gossiping, of the most two-facedness, meaning, it's so nice, I'm so happy you're here, and then when she leaves, like, oh, what a bee, you know what I'm saying, like that kind of thing, like gossiping, especially in the collegiate town. It's the people who, they dress and look exactly the way we've said they should. So it's these like Gilbert Mesa, good-looking, floral tie, right kind of balayage between the brunette and blonde hair. You know what I mean? Like just they look the right. They should be smiling in an Ensign magazine. And then poor inactive guy or inactive girl who is drank a couple times, doesn't have a temple recommend, comes to the bishop and is like, it's hard for me to come because I don't know. Annie is mean. The bishop's like, oh, Annie's a great girl. She's a sweet. She looks great. She's nice. She served her calling. But there's that disconnect because that bishop isn't hearing her gossip. He's only seeing the sweetest side of her. And she looks like his granddaughters. You know what I'm saying? And so there's a physicality to our suburban LDS culture, in America, at least I'll say, where it makes it hard because oftentimes the meanest ones, the purveyors of the toxicity in the wards, are those who look just like the righteous ones. And so that's like we only call out those who don't look like they belong oftentimes. When if a bishop sat down and said, "Hey Annie, look, why do I have 3 girls not wanting to come to church? Because they got a screenshot of your Snapchat about them or such and such. Why are you being mean? Like, you are being mean and you're hurting people. Why are you doing that?" I guarantee that meeting has happened very, very few times ever. When I can guarantee you this, in Provo, Utah, those meetings need to happen 1,000 times more starting yesterday night. Like, that's how bad it is. And so I promise you, like, it's we need to have direct, cutting to the core conference talks over and over and over and over and over again where this is addressed.
I also feel like we need to teach the youth to have the uncomfortable conversations. It wasn't until I left the church that I felt comfortable talking about like sex in general. Like, no,
wow, you didn't grow up in my ward.
Yeah. Same with mine.
I literally had dudes come in and be like, okay, so the manual says we have to talk about like the sex talk today. So I invite all your parents here that want to be here. Make sure we don't say something bad, but look, here's the do's and the don'ts, dog. When you go to prom night, you want to do this. Don't do it. You know, and we just had like this, like dude, just like hammering out. And he was the funniest cat.
where
We
was
were
that?
rolling our seat, dude. Right?
Where
it
was that
like,
when I was 16 years
not-
old?
Where was it?
Not in Idaho where the teen pregnancy is super high, dude. Those Idahoans do not. Y'all got nothing to do there, so you just bang and then like.
Okay, so
it's bad.
Here's one thing. I had a similar experience, but I was also in Utah, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, I had very, very good leaders who like actually were straightforward about that thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I do feel like there's that difficulty within your wards, right? Like when you have a different ward, you can sometimes have a bad experience because we have volunteer clergy, right? Like everyone's just
Well, that is such the sad thing. It's like we did a podcast earlier about somebody saying like, do you think of any understandable reasons, shall we say, that somebody might go inactive? And when you hear these heartbreaking stories of somebody either, misusing their power, not understanding the beauty and the gift they've been given by being a member of our church and just taking that for granted and mistreating others, it breaks my heart to hear that. And I think this reminds me of my favorite quote that, because I'm just as prideful as the next guy. You know what I'm saying? I used to have this on my binder throughout BYU, and then it got wet in my 3-ring binder that had the little plastic thingy. So the ink ran because the printers in the early 2000s sucked. They weren't like the laser printers now, so I got to get this back and get it laminated. But this was my favorite quote that I always had just to remind me. Hugh Nibley said this, but he said the worst sinners, according to Jesus, were not the harlots and the publicans, but the religious leaders with their insistence on proper dress and grooming, their careful observance of all the rules, their precious concern for status symbols, their strict legality, their pious patriotism. The haircut becomes the test of virtue in a world where Satan deceives and rules by appearances. And so that was always a humble reminder to me to keep any of those stupid suburban things in check. Now, I feel like I was blessed to live all around the world in a place where the church was a relief from the insanity of the secular world that I lived in. I think other people that maybe weren't blessed with those experiences may not have had that same takeaway. So I think the church does have to atone for the sin of letting culture dominate doctrine sometimes. But then also, I like how you guys recognize that, okay, there was also some maturity that came along with it. Because at the end of the day, if we're waiting around for the world to get better, well, dude, like, that's never going to happen. And there's people, like, you need something from church. There's people at church that might need something from you. Mm-hmm. And I don't know all the answers of life, but one of the answers in life that I do know is that we do better together.
Yeah.
And I think that's the ultimate gift that we are given through membership of the church is actually each other. The atonement of Jesus Christ, I almost feel like, is like God's ultimate bait and switch. Mm-hmm. Like, he knows one of the best blessings he can give us is just other children of God on earth right now. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But it's almost like he needs like bait and switch us with like atonement, 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 atonement. Meet Stephanie. Atonement, atonement, atonement. Here's Mark. You know what I'm saying? Like I almost feel like that's almost what God does with us.
Yeah.
So hit it.
I will say this. The strongest my testimony has ever been in my whole 22 years of existence was one ward that I had in high school, and I moved around a lot when I was younger, but all in like a 10-mile radius. So I've been in almost every ward in Boise, Meridian, and Eagle, okay? I've been in all of them. This one ward the ward family was so strong. The love, the connections, they were there. And that is the strongest my testimony has ever been. You go to church, you get such powerful things out of it because everyone can feel the love that they're surrounded by, and they feel comfortable to open up and have those deep discussions. My Sunday school class in that ward changed my life because we were all so open and honest and comfortable with each other, and we loved each other, and it was beautiful.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's so
It was
great.
great.
So,
CES letter now?
Oh my god.
yeah, I was about to say.
Oh,
so, with all the
I've
warm
got-
fuzzy stuff out of the way.
I've got 2 things to say real quick.
Okay,
Before we move on to the CES letter stuff.
go for it.
The first thing I think is that I just wanted to say, like, I think it's awesome of you guys to talk through all of this stuff and to just be where you're at, really choosing something other than bitterness. I think it's so easy to choose the negative for so long. And so I'm just really impressed with you guys for like choosing something good and for like aiming for something better.
Thank you, homie.
And I also think that anybody watching this who's like wondering, okay, what can I do to like make sure that I'm being better in my wards, right?
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, the advice that I'm about to share is from Louis C.K.
Oh,
Yeah. It's
like
weird.
humbled Louis C.K. 2021, or
This
like
is-
the one that was
this is
getting in
like-
trouble in 2018.
This is like an old one,
Okay.
but it is the only time you should ever be looking in another person's bowl is to make sure they have enough.
Oh, that's good to hear.
And I think
Bars.
that's the way that we should treat things at church. You should only ever be looking into other people's lives to be like, hey, how can I help? How can I be there for you? Like, and just love one another.
All right, I feel you. So now that we got all the warm fuzzy stuff out of the way,
Yeah.
I gotta know. What on earth do my semi-active / inactive / maybe won't be inactive for so long? I don't know where you guys at right now. But what you guys kind of left the church for a while, figuring out your own thing. Some stuff didn't sit right with you, so you wanted to, just go it alone. Okay. You say you read the CES letter and you came across, all of the above, all the other ex-Mormon stuff, the podcasts, the literature, the PDFs, what did you think? What's your thoughts on the CES letter and modern ex-Mormonism in general?
Honestly, so I read the CS letter and it was like kind of shaky the first time I read it. But as soon as I read it, I had a friend hit me up and he's like, "Yo, they revised it, right?" And I'm like, "What do you mean they revised it?" They're like, "Oh, it's not the same original document that the guy, whoever his name was, I don't know, but he sent a letter to the church education system, and it's not the same one. He's changed it because he knows he's wrong." So why do so many members or anti, whatever you want to call them, leave for a document that doesn't even hold any ground with the author?
Oh, you mean that required revisions?
Yeah.
Well, here I'm gonna put in ex-Mormon devil's advocate right here. Well, that's fine. Revisions are common. I mean, the Book of Mormon itself went through all kinds of grammatical revisions that many of the people that had great respect for the original manuscripts, but understood that, even the way that they were speaking through inspiration and revelation could not have been grammatically correct. So, revisions, that's fine. People update and evolve their opinions. We should expect to see what those updated and evolved opinions are.
not a translation, my friend.
Yeah.
It is not a translation of an
Yeah,
ancient
it's
record.
I'll ask you this as someone who's being
Okay.
you are being the devil's advocate.
Okay, cool. This is fun.
What about the CES letter tears down the most important parts of the gospel?
I don't think it tears it down. I think what the CS letter does very effectively is give a veneer of academic legitimacy to a lot of historical hearsay. And its job is not to tear down. Its job is to burrow in. If you ever remember that great cinematic masterpiece with I don't wanna miss a thing. You remember Armageddon, right? Do you remember that movie? Armageddon, the movie with Liv Tyler. I'm completely dating myself right now.
I was gonna say,
You know what I'm saying? But this cinematic masterpiece,
Oh yeah, I've seen this when I was a
Armageddon.
kid.
All right, you know, there's a really good scene in it that is really interesting. They had to stop the asteroid from
Oh
killing
yeah,
the
the Mel
Earth.
Gibson movie.
Yeah, exactly. They had to stop the asteroid from, hitting Earth. And the best thing that they could think of, and I'm not going to go like this more than once because people are going to clip it. You know what I'm saying? But
Why?
yeah, like he's laughing. He knows exactly why. You know what I'm saying? But what he said was, what the plan they finally came up with was, they said, look, if you launch missiles at the asteroid, they're just going to blow up on the surface, barely going to change the trajectory. But if you can get on the asteroid and burrow in, boom. And he said, like, people will be opening up your ketchup bottles for the rest of your life or something like that. That was the movie quote. So I think what the CS letter does is it gives a veneer of academic strength or legitimacy to really what is mostly, especially with like the Kinderhook plates and things like that, stories people haven't heard of, but upon first glance seem legitimate enough that he's able to burrow in underneath the protective layer that the average person has. That's like, oh, I don't know every story of church history, but I love Brother Williams, who teaches the church history class, and I know he's read every freaking book, and he says that church history is a beautiful thing that I've always wanted to read more of, but I've never been busy because I got kids. You know what I'm saying? So I think what the CS letter does is, I don't think it tears it down, but it sure as heck burrows in and then lets other arguments explode and exacerbates other issues that people have, like a general faith in God or so on and so forth.
And I think another thing that it aims to do is disrupt your ability to trust in the church. It tries to make you feel like anybody but it is lying to you, right? It's like, oh, you probably haven't heard of these things.
Yeah,
and
but it didn't work because they're here. So I want to hear more of these.
Yeah,
guys.
exactly.
Yeah, it's like, you have questions. For example, I had questions, and then I did my research on the church, and then I landed on the CS letter. But then some people forget to research that itself.
Mm-hmm.
And
You're only as credible as your resources.
Exactly. And so, yeah.
So what happened? But that's a great answer. What happened when you did your study, John?
Because I was told, by the way, as someone in your generation, that once people our age read the CES letter, it completely destroys a view of the church, and only boring Zuby type ultra Mormons are willing to stay, and normal people who are like to have fun.
I
will
think
not
it's
even
quite
believe in
the
it.
opposite. The people leaving the church are the people that never had a testimony to begin with.
Interesting.
Because ultimately, the
Speaking out the
questions
wicked.
that are being asked on the CES letter, why are you questioning them yourself? Does it really change? Does it really change the fact that the Book of Mormon was it was translated by the power of God? Does it change that? Does it really change that? Do these questions really change any of the four truths that we're taught as missionaries? We're taught as when we're
Well, don't you
when we're learning
know
about
that he stole the name King Noah from Noah Lake?
Yeah.
Therefore,
What is the
Mormons
importance of
don't.
knowing that?
Because where else would he gotten the name Noah from?
Or Jerusalem.
Try the
Jerusalem,
Bible.
Ohio.
Yeah.
Hey, wait. So, John, I want you to finish saying, so you looked into it. You said, okay, before you're going to leave a faith because of a document, you should look into the document itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, what did you find when you looked into it?
Well, just like how you mentioned, with ex-Mormons and, usually with ex-Mormons, once they leave the church, they become anti-Mormons. It's just, with the whole letter, it just really seemed like the person was just very angry, and it didn't really seem like it made any sense, just because he was obviously trying to disprove, the existence of the Lamanites and the Nephites. But with those certain things, when you do research into the Book of Mormon, you find out that there is proof that those things, that those people did exist, and so with that, it just kind of seemed like the person was just using random things just to try to throw your mind off. But when it comes down to it, I think that if you've been in the church and you've noticed changes and blessings, I think that something like that will not even it won't even waver your faith. It won't shake it at all, honestly, if you truly have a good base.
Interesting. You just reminded me of something I used to say on my mission. Actually, I still say it now. But I hate it when people say, "Oh, my mission." I'm like, have you not had a good spiritual experience since your mission? I hate that crap. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I developed this first on my mission.
I'm always making a weird face when the camera turns to me. I'm always like,
yeah.
one of my listening faces, every single time. I just feel so dumb. Okay.
So I always told people, I said, dude, I scientific method the church all the time. And they're like, what? And I said, yeah, literally take the 6 weeks challenge. Live a Mormon life as prescribed by just like, the primary Sunday school teachers. Just read your scriptures, come to church with us on Sundays, and just try and lead a generally better life, saying your prayers in the morning and at night. If you can just do those 4 things regularly for 6 weeks straight and come back to me and say your life didn't drastically improve, then dude, you're off the hook. I'll never bother you about this again. Right. But I found every time that I have actually put my pedal to the metal and actually taken seriously and almost empirically, as though it were like a study, the primary answers, my life has gotten drastically better. And so when people say that like the church is so unscientific, I'm like, well, if the organization's saying if you do these 5 things, your life will drastically improve, ends up drastically improving my life when I do those 5 things, then it makes me think that what they're peddling is real and that system actually works.
But there's a PDF I found.
Yeah, but we have affidavits. You know what I'm
That
saying?
were falsified.
So yeah, that's at least how it worked with me. Okay.
I want
Yeah.
to throw some topics real quick and just be like, what do you guys think? Okay.
And then
so-
we got to go because I'm boiling up in the
Okay,
studio.
okay.
It is hot in Southern California, baby.
What do you guys think? Book of Mormon can't be true because
I don't know.
the names in the Book of Mormon sound too much like cities near Joseph Smith.
I don't think they understood the question.
Okay, can you repeat that, please? Thank
Okay,
you.
so how can the Book of Mormon be true? Because King Noah, like I mentioned earlier, in the Book of Mormon, there's a lake near Joseph Smith called Noah Lake. Obviously, King Noah didn't exist, and he stole the name from a nearby area.
Let me ask you a question as an answer. Where did he get the name Lamanites? Where did he get the name?
Why does it matter where the names come
Yeah.
Well, there are names that sounded like layman.
Well, actually, here, let me try and see if I can
Find the
re-articulate what Quake was asking here. Obviously, there was something that made you reject the church because you went inactive. But then also, equally as obviously, there's something that made you reject ex-Mormonism. So what is the thing that made you reject ex-Mormonism?
No, that wasn't what I was asking.
Oh, okay. Well,
That's a good
sorry.
question, though.
That's
I
a
like
better
it.
question.
What made me reject ex-Mormonism?
Yeah.
Partially the lifestyle they live. It's full of hate. It's full of regret, sadness, longing for something that they're never going to get. I've never seen a truly happy ex-Mormon. Anti.
Mormons are very, very happy people, and they're very giving. And with ex-Mormons, they just never seem happy. People would stand like outside of they will go out of their way. They will leave their family at home to go to the temple to hold up a sign saying Joseph Smith was not a prophet. It's like you're going out of your way. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like,
and we're just clarifying, because we just did a podcast on this, trying to clarify the semantic argument that when we say ex-Mormon, we're referring to those that self-identify as ex-Mormon as their predominant self-identified title as antagonists of the church.
But what about Noah Lake?
So we're not saying every person that's inactive, all right? So that's interesting. So you reject it. Let's say anti-Mormon ex-Mormons, because there's plenty of people that feel like, okay, I don't go to church anymore. I'm ex-Mormon, but I'm not that over there. Okay. So out of respect for those people, yeah. So that's what made you reject anti-Mormon ex-Mormonism.
Yeah. So an example, when I moved, so my parents were divorced, and I lived in between both households. And when I was 14, my dad moved back to Boise, where I'm originally from. And our next door neighbor had a shirt, and it said Anti-Mormon Drinking Club. And he came over, and he just was the most stern. He just looked miserable. Like, I don't know how this guy could proudly be wearing that shirt and also say he's happy.
Oh,
on a
that's
t-shirt,
true.
bro.
Well, I don't understand about like the super anti-ex-Mormons. I've never understood this. They're so like, their main goal is to tear other people's testimonies down. You can't tell me that your experience in the church was that bad that you want to destroy other people's faith. Like, I've been offended and hurt by people in my ward. It's just so bitter and angry. It's kind of gross.
Wow.
People are happy, and you're trying to disrupt that. That honestly is you're being driven by the devil. Honestly, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Honestly, how?
Dude, I couldn't have begged for better sound bites.
these
From a producer's standpoint, right here, I'm like, holy crap!
They
Did
think-
somebody what? This is amazing.
They think like the ones who don't drink or have sex, like we're the mean ones. The semi-actives who don't care, like
No, the
"Yeah,
difference.
shut
the
up."
difference. The difference is I drink because I want to have a little fun. They drink because they know they're never gonna be happy again.
Oh,
It's a coping mechanism.
okay, we gotta stop this. We gotta stop.
Oh my
That
god!
was just
All right, this has been
TJ.
Midnight Mormons. We'll see you guys next week.
It's hot. Dude, let's turn on that freaking.
Turn on that fan.
I am
oh my god.
dying, dog. I am
TJ.
dying.
Savage.
Oh man.
Dude, that was awesome, guys. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh,
Good.
happy those guys drink because they'll never be happy again.
Down.
You know what's actually sad? The shirt, it's literally the Angel Moroni, but he has like a solo cup in his hand, and he's like this.
Well, I don't know. Part of me views that as possibly a little bit funny.
Oh
You know
yeah,
what
it's
I'm
like,
saying? But
it's a gag, but at the same time.
yeah. Oh, dude, that one was so savage,
That was
dude.
a great episode. That's making a lot.
This just never made sense.
It never
Yep.
did.
Here's a couple of people who aren't even members of the church. What do you
I
think?
never even considered being an ex-Mormon. I never
The
even
CS
considered that.
letter.
Yeah. Because you could see through it, right?
Yeah, no, because I'm a happy person. I don't want to disrupt
Each
other
point
people's
that
happiness.
made me shiver in the CS letter, it made me shiver for like 5 minutes, and I was like, okay, like hold up, this is something that I could look into.